Hey guys, welcome back to the Glad Trad podcast. I'm Jordan Pacheco.
And I'm Rodolfo Carlos. And wait a second, that's not my voice. This is the Glad Trad podcast. And you should know, real quick, this might put you for a shock, Rudy. This is the only podcast that is officially endorsed by Bishop Robert Barron's Mandatum.
We were paid to say that.
We were paid to say it. We were paid a lot of money by Word on Fire. We can buy St. Vitus a new church. How about that? Have you've heard about that?
What?
Well, I'll mention
the Mandatum?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Also, before actually, I don't want to mention it too much. I'm sure it's been done to death, but I do want to do this. You ever played a game called The Age of Empires 2, The Age of Kings?
No, I haven't.
So I'm going to put...
I know about it, though.
All right. Well, you're going to love this. I'm going to put a sound effect right here.
Mandatum.
When you click on one of your villagers playing as the Britons, they say...
Mandatum.
And then you can click them to build a house and they'll be like...
Bolden.
I'm not kidding.
Bolden?
When Bishop Barron rolled that out, I was like... We're LARPing today. Weird. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. How's Exodus 90 been for you, Rudy?
I don't know, man. It's hard. It's hard, but not in the way that you would think. I'm doing really well with the ascetic practices.
Yeah.
But I am suffering in the spiritual side of things. Like, I just can't. I don't know what it is. I'm like hitting a roadblock every time.
That's a very, I'm kind of in the similar boat, but I'm better than you. So I'm just going to say that I'm doing way better. No, but you know what I've noticed is I think that part of it is just how we as men approach things. I think is difficult. I think we're very good about doing the physical and the arduous, or like pushing ourselves to do the arduous, because when we think about like physical discipline, it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I can take cold showers. I can work out. I can fast and abstain, and I can, structure myself, and it's discipline, and that's really cool. Spiritual life's a very, very tricky one for guys. And I think that's why a lot of it has to do with physical repetition.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about the Mass and the militancy of altar serving and what the priest is doing. And the fact is that, especially for men, we being drawn to that kind of stuff, military precision and everything, that helps unlock greater spirituality for us.
Yeah, in a certain sense, these ascetic practices kind of break through into your spirituality a little bit. So, for example, on Fridays I've made a really, really penitential day where I've been doing bread fasts, and that really helps you to put everything into perspective. Like, okay, well, I am gonna suffer today, and that's gonna subdue all of my passions. And in a certain sense, I'm growing in my spirituality, even though I'm not, praying the 15 decades of the Rosary that day, or I really should be doing that. But I think people have this idea that you have to constantly be reading a prayer book or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that's tricky for me, because for me, for instance, the greatest amount of my spiritual gratification, surprisingly enough, comes from reading church history and apologetics. So to kind of break into, and of course there are many different kinds of, there are a lot of different roads that lead to Rome, quote unquote. So there are many different spiritualities that one can take that will lead them to God. There are some of us who have the gift of reading about the mystics and reading about miracles and really understanding the very unseen side of our faith.
Yeah, I was talking to one of our friends, Shane. Shane, if you're listening to us,
shout out Shane.
Shout out to
Shane. You see those comments, keep them up.
And I had a discussion with him one day. I was like, well, how did you discern your spirituality? How did you discern those spiritual practices that you took up? And he's like, well, you really shouldn't worry about it too much. There isn't really a blanket approach to this sort of thing. It's not a one size fits all type of thing. So certain people, that's why we have that rich tradition, right? That's why we have people who were mystics. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's a mystic,
right? Even
though some people, they think they are. But no, there's only a really small amount of people who can do that. That's a gift from God. There's certain people who are more capable of doing the ascetic practices, and then there's other people who are more I don't know, more the kind of person that would be reading a prayer book throughout the whole part of the day, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to figure it out. So,
and I think, you know, we're sticking to it. It's not been 100% for sure. But the objective of exit, it's not, and what's funny too is that humility to admit it's important too, because it's not like a badge of courage that it's like, oh, look, I'm doing so well with Exodus or with whatever. I'm, you know, and I think it's
not a flex.
It's not a flex.
Yeah.
And we're going through it with a fraternity of guys, of course, at our parish. And it's very clear, like, we all have our different struggles and challenges. And what's really funny is I'm constantly reminded of when St. Paul talks about how there are many different gifts, and, you know, there are many parts. We're all together, one body in Christ. And I'm seeing that now. There are some guys who, for them, it was easy to cut out sugar and sugary drinks. And it's hard. Like, for me, it's so hard to cut out, like, YouTube. And especially
wheat thins.
And here's the thing. I'm not, sugars are one thing, but I love carbs, which I know people are like, well, that's just like sugar too. But you know what I'm saying? Breads. I love breads and wheat thins, and I miss snacking. I didn't realize how much snacking I was going to miss. Yeah. And so there's some guys that do that. There's some guys who really, really like miss like the hot shower. There's some guys who just really miss, fasting is a very difficult thing for some. And you realize, like, there's all these different weaknesses and all these different strengths, but everyone's been very, very good and open and honest about it. And it's true, like, you have to go through it as a fraternity of guys. So, you know, we have anchors, and it's a cool structure. And I'm very happy that I'm doing it, because I'm offering it as a sacrifice for my marriage.
Yeah.
And both of our fiancés are doing Nineveh 90.
Yeah. Shout out to the ladies too, because they're doing something similar. It's not. I don't know if there's as much of the ascetic in there, but it is very...
It's way more on the spiritual side.
It's very spiritual and rigorous, and it's impressive.
Yeah.
So it's... I mean...
Yeah, so shout out to all the girls who are going through Nineveh, because and you guys don't have an app either. We have an app at least. So God bless you guys, but that's a wonderful thing.
There's ways around it too, you know. Like, have you ever used Discord before?
Yeah.
It's a gaming app.
Oh, of course. Of course. You know I've used Discord.
But you can purify it by doing that. I don't know if you're listening, girls, but maybe it's too late to do it.
That's true. Discord will do. I think they're on WhatsApp, which is okay, good, but Discord's a really easy way.
Yeah.
I just want to say real quick before we move on that I think that you go hard on Fridays with your bread fast, just so you can just say I'm sorry for all the shenanigans, all the memes that you find during the week. But I'm happy that you're still mining the gold mine, because this has been a doozy.
You know, I started off saying, "Oh, I have an archive of memes," but I lied. I was actually pulling.
So we have Facebook groups that we go on, and I was actually I know, right? So it's funny. I remember a conversation that Rudy and I had. I was on Facebook, not cheating. I was answering a message from my father. Look at me, so good and disciplined, quote unquote. And I like looked down at my little scroll, and I was like, "Is that my message?" And Rudy was still posting in the group. I was like, "Well, at least everyone gets to see it."
Yeah.
So Exodus, of course, cuts out a lot of things that we can't do, right? There's no internet, really, quote unquote. There's no television. Well, like unnecessary internet is what's supposed to be. There's you have to listen to music that lifts the soul to God, which means that a lot of genres that I know I'm very fond of. Like, essentially, I'm only playing my Amazon Renaissance station and Baroque station, and it's the Roaring 20s, and I can't even play jazz, and I'm so upset. I'm so sad, but it's okay.
Music for me, I don't.
Are you a Philistine, Steen? Are you about to say you're a Philistine?
No, I don't know what that means, but
Philistines are like people who they like hate the arts, hate music, hate everything.
No. But when I see that music that lifts the soul to God, that's the prerequisite for it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. That's such a broad way of looking at it. So,
is that ambiguous?
It's a little ambiguous for me. So I've been listening to certain game soundtracks.
Honestly,
well, some of them are good.
That's actually a really good point, because here's something. I like to think that classical music in particular is language of the soul, and a lot of video game soundtracks really draw on those great inspirations. I think Halo is a good example. And so I think that it's a little wide and ambiguous, and it doesn't mean like, oh, I just have to listen to I have to listen to Hillsong for the next 3 months. But it really does mean finding music.
Chick-fil-A radio.
Yeah, but it's like
don't go to Chick-fil-A.
Don't go to Chick-fil-A. Not Resquet in Pace.
Yeah, that ship sailed. No more.
But I think it's one thing that for me is I like old timey kind of Americana. You know,
me too.
And so like that whole soundtrack of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" kind of sounding, yeah. But there's a lot of Christianity, of course, infused in that time throughout blues and old timey and like early country and all that kind of stuff.
It's kind of proddy sometimes.
It's kind of proddy, but
but it's still there.
But here's the thing: the history of America is Protestant. Well, it's Catholic, of course, too, of course. But the history of that part of the country, the southern kind of part, is of course Protestant. Louisiana being the notable exception, but still, even though it's like a little proddy, it's old timey proddy. So there's something about like sojourning in a land that is kind of scary and being alone and having you, but like nothing. But it's very like
drawing your strength from God.
It's me and Jesus, but I think it's a good kind of viewing. It's like Dante escaping out into the forest right before he finds Virgil in a way.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
But what's really nice is that not all of the I don't want to say trappings but not all the relaxants are done away with. So we on the Glad Trad podcast have caught up in what I think is a very exciting, wonderful, and good to uncover trend that's going on. I say on a lot of corners of young Catholic masculinity. So we are pipe smokers. We have tobacco pipes. And in fact, Rudy has, I want to say you're good enough to make it a small business, honestly. But Rudy goes out of his way to like buy beaten up tobacco pipes and renovate them.
Yeah, they're called estate pipes. And it's a big thing.
He gets them off dead people.
You know what? I've never thought of that.
That's what an estate sale. Yikes.
Essentially, that's what's happening is these pipes just show up on eBay. They've been in an attic for, I don't know, 50 years, 20 years or something. And they're just not in good shape. So people sell them. And it's a big thing within the pipe community where you get an estate pipe and you restore it and get it going. And the cool thing about pipes is, it's an antique and it has like
a history.
Yeah, that you pick up and you bring it back. And it becomes yours,
There's something, what I think is, it's very funny just in terms of the wider culture. There was a massive crusade against smoking, particularly cigarettes, of course. This started in the 1960s, went through the 1980s. It's still on today, but I think that it's not quite as hot as it used to be, of course.
It's different now. I think now the crusade is against vaping.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because vaping is so lame.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Are you even a trad if you vape? No. That's some Nova sort of.
Ashley and I have some family friends, and unfortunately one of their kids vaped too much. And like his lungs got flooded with this
with the juice.
It's like, man, why would you vape? You're vaping a smoke machine juice.
Right.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, but there is something kind of. But what's very funny is I've noticed this. It's cigars, but especially pipes. Especially pipes escaped that kind of scourge. And the easy example is I'll use my mom for instance. So I got my first pipe at 18 years old. And I don't know what all the styles of pipes are, so I'm going to try to be my best descriptor. I'd say it was a pretty run-of-the-mill, standard-looking pipe. It had like kind of a little bit of the S-curve,
S-curve?
It is an S-curve. What, as opposed to like a C-curve or something? You're the expert here. You want to tell me?
On the histogram?
Oh my gosh. Okay, you know what? Glad Chat Podcast will be right back.
Brought to you by Adobe.
That's right. So there's I wish. Oh shoot. This has been edited in Adobe Audition, actually. No, it's not. It's actually in Premiere. Fun fact. Plot twist. So what's cool about it is I bought it at 18. I didn't really have my first smoke in it until I was 20, I don't think.
Oh, really? So you just held on to it?
I held on to it. And I remembered I held on to it for a couple of reasons. First off, because as a man of image, and by that I mean to say our lives revolve around image, and I as a cinematographer, you as a photographer, Image is everything.
Uh-huh.
I call it historical peer pressure is why I picked up my pipe, because what I saw was I
could
would
see that for you.
in Colorado, where I'm from,
Yeah.
you know, we have a lot of histories of mountain men and miners, and I was a Civil War nerd growing up. And what was funny is you look at all these like real gruff men in their beards and everything, and they're sitting around just smoking their pipes.
It was inevitable.
Just being men. And I was like, I want to be that guy, you know? And then so my back to my original story. So when I bought it, my mom, you know, she was like, what you got? I was like, I got a pipe. It's my 18th birthday. And my mom paused and she goes, you know, I had an uncle who smoked a cherry tobacco pipe. I remember the smell. I remember coming into his house and I remember the smell. It was pleasant. And there was no like secondhand kind of, don't you know that's going to kill you kind of a thing. But it was like my mom was remembering something really nice and pleasant about that. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's something about the gentleman out with his pipe and kind of how the culture of pipe smoking is that paints a way more pleasant image than vaping and certainly than smoking cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And I think the philosophy of smoking is completely different. You know?
Because you're not smoking for a nicotine hit. You're smoking for more of a pleasure type of thing, right?
Yeah, there's and I can't remember the exact quote, but there is a Chesterton quote which talks about if you drink because you need to drink, you shouldn't drink. And I think and if you smoke because you need to smoke, you shouldn't smoke. And so there's something about, so first off, of course, for most pipe tobacco, it is just straight tobacco. I prefer, I'm sure we'll get into what kind of tobacco we prefer, but just in terms of like the general philosophy, I don't smoke. I remember actually I went to the doctor when I first started smoking, and by smoking, I would smoke like once every 2 months. Mm-hmm. Now I'm at like once every 2 weeks. So, but I went to my doctor and you know, it was a new doctor and he asked, are you a smoker? And I went, well, I smoke a little bit. He was like, well, what do you mean? I went, well, I smoke a pipe like once every 2 months, sit by my pool and do that. And he looked at me right in the eye and he said, you're not a smoker. I carried on with his notes. They did so of course, I'm going to say this, it's not an endorsement for tobacco. I think that there is an image and a quality and a feeling of smoking, especially with good company, where it's ritualistic. And I endorse that because I think that it does breed authentic, good, and for us, very Catholic relationships.
Healthy friendship. Yeah.
And that's really hard to find. And you do have to have a commonality, but also there's like a time where you have to relax. It's very funny because we run in a group of guys at our parish, and when everyone kind of comes over, oftentimes, you know, they'll come over and they'll have their significant others and everything. And there'll be a time when the men have just kind of pulled out like their little like circle of chairs out on the driveway.
Smoke some cigars
and pipes. And the women, you know, will go do their thing. And it's enjoyable. Yeah. Not because it's not having women nearby. That's not.
Life bad.
Oh my god. But it is really like there's something ritualistic about sitting down with, because a pipe takes, you can speak to this because you know a pipe takes practice and patience.
Yeah.
It's you and this moment, and it's picturesque and it's peaceful. And I think that there's a ritual with pipe smoking where you really do kind of feel at peace with the world and peace in your soul and with your surroundings, which is extremely important.
Yeah, I think so too, because one of the reasons I got into it, actually, the story of how I got into pipe smoking, it goes back to when I was 18 as well.
Hey.
I went into a tobacconist on, I think it was Brand Boulevard back, I don't know if the Americana was there at the time, but there was a tobacco shop and they sold cigars and everything. And I walked in, and me being a broke 18-year-old kid, I go in there and I say, well, I want to buy a pipe. And they're like, yeah, okay, well, here's our pipe selection. And they were high end, you know, so they were telling me, well, here's the cheapest pipe that I have. It's $200. And I was like, wow, okay, well, I'm not sure if I can get into that. So then I got into cigars. And I really, really like cigars. But I always had that in the back of my head that I really wanted a pipe. Well, it was until about last year that I had come over. I think you were having an event here. and or maybe we were just all hanging out. But you had your church warden pipe, you know, the really long, like Gandalf.
It's
pipe.
one that Gandalf has. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I think we had a conversation about it, and I was like, oh, I wonder, maybe now's the time to pick one up. And I did a little research, and that's how I ran into estate pipes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, if estate pipes are that cheap, then I'm going to get into it. So I picked one up. I think it was a few months ago on Craigslist. There was this Muslim guy that had a bunch of stuff in a storage place, and I roll up, and he's got like his Quran sitting on top of his dashboard. I was like, oh boy, what am I getting into?
You could smell the Catholic on you, the infidel on you.
Are you an infidel?
Yeah, right.
No, I walked in, and he had a whole bag just of old pipes, and it didn't cross my mind that it could be a dead guy's pipes.
Yeah.
But I picked one out. I picked one out that I thought would look cool, and it was like one of those. I don't know if you guys know what it looks like, but it's like a bulldog pipe. So it's like it's kind of like I don't know. It's a very British looking pipe.
Kind of like, it's very bold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bold pipe. And clean that one up, and then we had our first sesh.
There's that famous picture of J.R.R. Tolkien, and he's smiling, and he has his pipe, that straight one. Yep. What's funny is when you talk about high-end pipes, because my first pipe was a $20 one, and in fact, none of my pipes are. I had 3, now I only have 2 because I lost my original one, my baby. But I don't really buy very ritzy, expensive ones. And what's funny is that the history of tobacco pipes is
they don't have to be expensive.
Corncob pipes.
Yeah.
Think about that. That is literally a corncob husk. And I actually, what I did for some of my friends is I bought, you can buy them on Amazon really, really cheap. Like 4 little corncob pipes, one-time use kind of things for like $10. And you just like give them out to friends because, you know, it's
to come over.
Yeah,
you know.
So I know this sounds like I'm dishing out I'm like, hey kid, do you want to smoke?
You want some candy?
But it's not like that at all, right? There's no like peer pressure. There's no worries. And again, it's like when it comes to smoking a pipe, there's a ritual to it. So, you know, it's not just taking a cigarette out of a box and lighting it, but you have to pack it, and there's a way that you have to pack it, and you have to make time.
You slow down. And you know what's really cool about it is a couple days ago we were hanging out, and I don't know what the occasion was. I think maybe we've gotten into this groove where we'll say, oh, we're going to record a podcast today. And then we show up and we're like, maybe not.
Whatever.
Well, it was one of those days where I came over and brought the pipes and everything, and we were hanging out. And we took some foldable chairs out into the front lawn. And we just hung out there. You have a little table, put it down on the table, put the table down on the lawn, and we had our tobacco out and everything. We were packing our pipes.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you know, we get to the point where it's lit and we're just hanging out, just smoking our pipe, relaxing. And your neighbor does a really slow drive-by. And I remember thinking to myself, man, what is up with this guy? Because he's like leaning over his steering wheel looking at us. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? He parks his car, and it turns out it's your neighbor. And, you know, he was surprised to see us doing that because he said something really interesting. He said, nobody relaxes anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And that struck me as kind of odd. I never thought about that, but it's true. Maybe that resonates with your life. Maybe you don't relax enough. And pipe smoking for me has become that where you do slow down a little bit, and you know, you take your time, and I wouldn't consider it a vice for me, not yet. I don't think it will be.
No, I'm watching. I got
but
you.
It's a really pure form of relaxation.
Yeah,
you know,
there are and it's funny too because we know that. Again, if it's habit forming and you need it, that's when it becomes a vice. Yeah. Right? When you can't shake it. I've not had, and it's not like a sake of tolerance, but also like we don't smoke because we're stressed we need to. I don't think actually after a stressful day, I don't even think about smoking because stress smoking is bad. And what's really funny is that stress is actually one of the biggest killers. They've done medical research on, again, all tobacco is bad. It's better to not take tobacco than take tobacco. But remember that for the physical effects, there's also mental effects and all that kind of stuff. So for instance, the United Nations Health Organization did a study.
Whoa.
I know, right? Before I talk about this fake news, no, I do not. I do not.
Ooh, globalist alert.
Oh, shit, modernist. Hey, I'm going to be invited to the Vatican now. What you say?
Yeah, go hang out with the Pope.
Yikes. So but what they found in their study was that they did it between non-smokers, cigarette smokers, and pipe and cigar smokers. They found out that cigarette smokers, of course, have the worst kind of quality of life comparatively, but they found that pipe smokers were on par with the general population of non-smokers. That was a weird one, and I think there's a couple of reasons for it. So, first off, you don't inhale a pipe like you do a cigarette. So there's different areas of potential risk that you have in your mouth, of course, like tongue cancer, all that kind of stuff, throat cancer, but there's not as much lung cancer. But they found out, but that wasn't it. They were finding the quality of life was about the same. And why? Because it was stress. Mm-hmm. Stress is a silent killer, especially nowadays. And they found out that people who chain smoke and smoke cigarettes lead more stressful lives than people who smoke pipes, cigars, or don't smoke. Mm-hmm. And that was a very funny thing. And I think now, the fact that I'm still categorized as a non-smoker because I don't smoke frequent enough, I smoke once every 2 weeks. And what is it? It's like I said, it's a ritual. So if Rudy comes over, if it's by myself, I'll just go in my backyard. I'll put on some Baroque. When Rudy and I were out on my front lawn, we had oranges that we picked right off my tree. And so we're sitting there, like I have a glass of water or something. And it is relaxing. And it's very funny that he said that, like, nobody relaxes anymore. And that's really true, that we oftentimes, when we're stressed, we form bad habits or we form dependencies that need releasers on. But when we are just together as brothers, sharing a moment, sharing a smoke, there's something really nice about that. And we can talk about everything. And here's the funny thing about smoking a pipe, just in terms of how it works. You pack it really well. There are tools for it. There are tampers. I'm a mountain man, so I like to just like use my thumb, whatever. But you're probably gonna relight it. You're probably gonna relight it multiple times throughout your session. Your session, if it's with a friend, is going to last an hour. And if it's by alone, it's going to take you 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the bowl that you have, depending on the depth, depending on how well you packed it. There's all these factors that come into play, but you don't really think about it. It's not like I'm an amateur or I can't do it or I'm not part of the tribe. If you bend down, try to see if your pipe is still stoked and discover that it's not. Just go light it again, you puff a little bit, and it's nice. I have 2 pipes currently. And my first is a very Sherlock Holmes, like very straight one. Mm-hmm. And it's a good pipe for like if you're working or you need to walk anywhere and you need something clamped. I'll probably get like one that's a little bit smaller. My second one that I'm most fond of is the church warden style, which is the one that you see Gandalf and the Hobbit smoking. And what's cool about this one is it's a longer stem, which means it's actually a cooler smoke. It has a very deep bowl, which means that it can be a faster smoke of how it goes. But what's also cool is its history. So the reason why it's called a church warden pipe, I don't know if you know this, is back in the old days, there would be guards in towers and in the towers of churches, because a lot of times in a village or wherever you're at, the church naturally has a tower, the bell tower. And so guards making sure everything's okay, the night watch. And, he'd stick his church warden pipe out the window so that the smoke wouldn't get in his eyes. So he's not obscured from his duty and it's not like smelling him up or anything like that if he's inside a tower. But what's funny about that style of pipe in particular is because it's long, you can't just hold it in your teeth and call it a day as you can with a shorter pipe. So you have to literally sit down or cup it in one hand, which naturally, to the point, slows you down. So, when there's a time where I'm like, man, it's a really nice afternoon, it's quiet, it's peaceful. I'm gonna like kind of think about things and just like sit with my pipe. That you are taking out that chunk of time, that nothing really disturbs you in that moment, and it's true. There's a rhythm of life that we've just jolted ourselves up to going all the time. If we're going to take stress off, it has to be inside this vast motion. Like, look how we video game, look how we take in food, all these kinds of things. But something about pipe, it's very funny. When you smoke a pipe, it's very funny how quiet you realize the world is.
Yeah, it's a very pure form of leisure. And leisure, with its proper limitations, you know, you don't want to be too overindulgent with this kind of stuff. But, you know, leisure is a gift from God,
Yeah.
and we need that. We can't always be going a million miles an hour, because we're going to burn out, or we're gonna really feed into our vices. You know, if the only amount of relaxation that you have in your life is, you know, the moment where you're stuffing like massive amounts of sugar in your mouth, you know, that's not healthy. You know, so there's other ways to do it. Now, for us, I think we've gotten into a rhythm where pipe smoking is our form of relaxation, and there is an aspect of contemplation within that space.
Yeah.
That I really like about pipe smoking. The other thing I like about it too is that, just inherently, with all the guys, because it's a very manly thing to be a pipe smoker. I think a lot of men look to it as something that is really masculine, and it is. And one of the cool things that has happened as we've taken on this hobby is that other men have jumped on board, and we have that in common. So not only are we, you know, taking the time out to find leisure and to find joy in that gift of God of leisure, we're also building a stronger friendship, stronger brotherhood by doing that in moderation.
In moderation. Well, it's true. There is something very interesting about pipe smoking and what I would say the reclamation of authentic Catholic masculinity, because it's not like it is something that is, I think, very common in the mindset of the Catholic male, and I'm trying to piece together why. It is something that, even if you're not Catholic, of course, I think it is just a part of that masculine art that's been reclaimed, and I think there's something about a pipe that feels professional, in control, in charge. Like, you're not a boy.
Yeah.
You know, this is the way I say it. Like, your grandfather smoked a pipe. Even if that's not true, the image in your mind is men of a time who did their duty and then got to enjoy the fruits of their labor. And they had mental clearness. They had sobriety about them. Their wits were always about them. They were, you know, they're very deliberate. I think about neither my grandfathers smoked pipes. But the kind of men that they are and were really lends to that image a lot of times. And so I think that there's like a hearkening back to our ancestors. And in terms of in Catholicism, it's a very funny thing. I think naturally as Catholics, we like smoke. You know, I think especially as we are glad trads, there's no such thing as enough incense.
Yeah, here's our plug for the traditional Latin Mass. Okay. If you're in a diocesan parish, you're going to the new Mass, you're probably not encountering incense.
Ooh.
You're only encountering it on Easter, Christmas, 2 times out of the year. If you like incense, come to the Latin Mass. Ooh. And there's a reason why we have incense, especially in the on Sundays, for instance. Well, Sundays are the most common days where we would have incense anyway. We typically don't have that in a low Mass. But the process of lighting the incense has a prayer to it. So in the canon of the Mass, there's a part where the priest, he is lighting the incense and he is invoking the intercession of Saint Michael, the Archangel. And as soon as it happens, you know, you see the smoke rising out of the thurible, and you get that sweet sensation of the smell of the incense, and just that beautiful symbolism of what that smoke rising means.
Yeah, and I think that for us as Catholics, because we understand, and it's a harken back to the Jewish roots of our faith, of course, incense for us is our prayers. That's what that's called.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. I was laughing about something else.
Sorry. Do you not want me to say that again?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So for us as Catholics, this comes from we've carried that on. We've repurposed the incense of the temple for the incense of the mass. So for the Jewish religion, incense, of course, is a representation of prayers being lifted up to God. Mm-hmm. It is a literal manifestation in a way of the spiritual reality of what our prayers are doing. And we see that in the mass. And so I think that it's very funny that we talk about the contemplative state that we get in when we smoke pipes, whether alone or with a brotherhood. It's not a very rowdy kind of thing. And what's very funny is when we were out again, like with all the guys out on my driveway with our kind of circle, we started just talking theology.
Oh man, it was a council.
It was a really good council. And I was like, man, what is about this that really evokes that? But I think that is somewhere in our minds, I think that is a part of it, that it's not just the image because it looks cool and you want to look cool and you want to be like your grandfather. But it really is that we instinctively know that smoke and a kind of smoke does represent our thoughts being lifted up to God on high. And I think about it all the time. You know, it's like when you puff, when you puff out, like there's a decent good cloud of smoke and it wafts a little bit and it goes up and it dissipates. And you think, and it's not like you burst in, light your pipe, load your pipe, smoke 5 minutes and get out of Dodge. It is really like the mass where there is this tremendous amount of silence and patience.
It's a ritual.
And in a world where rituals are under attack everywhere, where the only rituals which are endorsed are rituals of sin and of vice, how wonderful it is to find something that can be very meditative and contemplative.
Well, even before lighting the pipe, it's a ritual of taking the tobacco out. And I go to this tobacconist now. It's still in Glendale. I live in Glendale now. And so I go to this tobacconist on Glen Oaks, which I like to call the Glendale Speedway. People, oh man, all night long. Mm-hmm. It's just like, brr, brr. And that now people have these like, instead of really loud mufflers, they have mufflers that like literally sound like they're dragging on the ground, like with holes in them.
Will you give a sound demonstration?
Like gunshots.
Can you please give a sound demonstration?
No. It's just like all night long. All right, I live right on that street. So anyway, this tobacconist, really cool guy. Get all my tobacco from this guy, and he sells it in all different kinds of forms, like in bulk, or you can get tins. I've gotten some tins that I really like. But the first time that I bought one, I was trying to unscrew the damn thing, and I'm in my car for like 5 minutes. I'm like trying to unscrew the top off this thing. It looks just like an Altoids tin. Oh my God. And I'm trying to rip the top off and I can't do it. I'm like, oh boy. All right. Well, I'm going to look like an idiot. I'm going to go back in there and ask him, how do you open this thing? So he's like, okay, well, you got to take a coin, right? And then you put it in this little slot here. And then you lift the coin up, and then the suction just, it pops open, and boop, there you go. And he's like, here you go. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. So that's part of the ritual. Then you take it home. And because it's in a tin, it's meant to be preserved. The tobacco is meant to be preserved for a long time. So it's sort of moist. It has a moisture content, and most of the time the tins are a little bit overly moist. So what you do is this is all part of the ritual. You take out a little bit of tobacco, as much as you're going to use. Mm-hmm. You rip it off a little bit. You rip a couple parts off, get all the chunks out, and then you dry it for 30 minutes. So you sit there, you think about life, you contemplate your navel, you twiddle your thumbs, you wait 30 minutes. I don't know, you go, you peel an orange, whatever.
Hey, take it right off the tree.
Yeah, you take it right off of Jordan's tree. That's part of the ritual too. And then you come back 30 minutes later, the tobacco's a little bit dry now.
And I'm wondering what you're doing in my driveway.
Then the other part of the ritual is then you start packing your pipe. Mm-hmm. You pack your pipe and you do it really slowly so that you don't pack it too tight, you don't pack it too loose, you Goldilocks it a little bit. And then, you think you're ready to start smoking the pipe. Oh, no, not yet, bud. What you do is you first have to establish a charring light, okay? So you can't just go in there like Rambo.
Yeah, you can't be a mountain man. Who would do that?
You can't go in there guns blazing. So you char the top of the tobacco a little bit. You let it go out. And you wait and you contemplate life. And you sit there and you enjoy not being in control of this thing. Or to a certain extent, you are.
Yeah.
But you can't force it to be a certain way.
That's right.
So you're sitting there, you're waiting for it to dry off a little bit. Then you go in, you go with your master light, you light the whole thing up, take a couple puffs, relax, and then you're just smoking the pipe. You're just sitting there, you're hanging out with a bro, or you're alone and you're just sitting there enjoying this the taste of the tobacco, the experience of it all. And then sometimes the pipe goes out and you relight it and you keep going. So it's a ritual that forces you to slow down. And that is very countercultural.
Extremely.
It is now you can't take 5 minutes for yourself because people enjoy the hustle and bustle so much so that they brag about how much work they have to do. Have you ever had a person like that where they say, "Oh, I worked so hard this week. I didn't go to sleep till like, I don't know, 3 a.m. I was working
see my family."
Yeah, I didn't see. Oh, that's really cool, man. That you don't have a normal life. Wow, that's great. I love that for you.
I want to commend you because that was the best if I was like your son, that is exactly how I'd want
son.
Like, wait, hold up there, bud. You got to do it. You got to light a charring light first, little buckaroo.
Yeah, hold on there.
Hold on there. Now, don't tell your mom, but I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you the old Carlos technique.
Don't tell your mom. I let you puff on the pipe.
That's right. So yeah, no, it's the ritualism. I mean, it's true, and for someone maybe considering, they're like, well, that's a lot of steps, I don't know what to do. The answer is it's not about, like any kind of good ritual, the steps are important, but more important is the philosophy behind it. Slow down. That's what it is. Slow down. Grab a couple buddies, grab yourself. You don't have to buy the most expensive pipe in the world.
Nah.
But it's just about taking that moment that's authentically yours. And there's a lot of other pieces of the image that can be tied to it. I think that, something that I like to do, I said I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, and I don't. But something that would be fun to do this year is to go up and fishing, maybe at Big Bear or something,
I've got a bug to go fishing. I want to try fly fishing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, you're going to be in Colorado in August.
Right
that
after.
would actually be a beautiful time.
Yeah.
And so there's something about like the image. And again, it's like, imagine like a lake and you're just out there, you're fishing. Fish are biting. Maybe they're not biting. I don't know. Who cares? You're just out fishing. Yeah. Anyone that's gone fishing with their dad, everyone knows that quintessential story. And it's like, you go up there and maybe you're going to get a trout. But there's something else. There's something far greater. And that's that you're with the people that you love just in the moment.
And nothing is said. You're just sitting there.
Nothing is said. You're just sitting there. And that's what the pipe really does invoke. Let me ask you a question. What are your tobaccos of choice? What do you like? What do you gravitate towards? Your tobacconist in Glendale is wonderful, by the way. Yeah. I'm
so new to it that I can't give a proper answer, but I really do like this tobacco. It's called Eileen's Dream. And that's kind of silly, but I've got this bug where I just love everything about Ireland. I love Irish everything. And this particular tobacco is it's an aromatic type tobacco. So it's kind of like what your mom had in mind when she was thinking about that.
The cherry tobacco with uncle, yeah.
She was thinking of that aromatic quality of that tobacco, who's probably a sweet smelling type of thing. So that's an aromatic tobacco that I like. It has a really nice chocolatey flavor. You still get a sense of the taste of tobacco, which I really enjoy the taste of tobacco. But there's chocolate, there's a white truffle in it, there's a little bit of Irish whiskey in it. I like the tin art. There's a giant 3-leaf clover on it.
Nice. So, are you like forced to love Ireland because you're marrying an Irish girl, or was this just an organic
That's how it was in the beginning.
Now you just accepted
See,
it.
Ashley would say Ireland this, Ireland that, and I'd be like, I don't care about Ireland. I'm gonna propose to you there. This is me thinking in my head. I'm just gonna propose to you there because it's important to you. But when we got there, oh man, my whole demeanor changed. I fell in love with that country, which is a shame because of just how things are right now, culturally speaking.
Where we claim it.
But yeah, I love Ireland.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your favorite type of tobacco?
So I'm not a kind of guy who I like a little bit of the taste of tobacco. I suppose someone's gonna be like lifer, but I mean it's nice and enjoyable. I can do like kind of straight, but I like smooth blends a lot. There's morning blends. It was a British tobacco company called Dunhill. And it was Dunhill Morning Blend. It no longer is made. The tin's no longer made, although Dunhill is still around. But their tin, this morning blend, I don't know what all was in it. I think it was a little bit of nutty, kind of like a coffee kind of flavor under there at the bottom. Nice. Interesting stuff. But it was smooth as sin. It was just so wonderful. And what's nice is like the tobacco flavor wasn't overpowering. It wouldn't. But the most important thing for me is like after a good smoke, am I going to like have to scrub my face, take my shower, like change my clothes all the way? And the answer is like no. It was very aromatic for being kind of like a more original kind of tobacco. Mm-hmm. I just got finally, so to honor my mom, I finally got some cherry tobacco this week. Right. I got what is this stuff? It is Captain Black cherry tobacco, which is a very popular brand, and it's dessert tobacco.
Yeah.
You might have heard of dessert cigars, where it's like cigars that are just like melted in honey and all that kind of stuff. It is so smooth. And it's not overpoweringly cherry. In fact, I don't really taste a lot of cherry. It's something a little fruity, but not quite like, oh yeah, this is cherry. You can kind of get a sense of that sourness a little bit, I guess, a tartness. But really, it's pleasant. And the taste is crazy awesome. Oftentimes, like, for appearance's sake, and also part of the ritual for me is like, after I smoke, like, I'll go brush my teeth or like, do Listerine. I'll scrub my face. I have particular clothes that I smoke in. I don't smoke in I don't smoke in my main clothes. I make sure that like I wash my stuff afterwards. I do this because I think it's an important part of my family life. I'm sure at some point, I'm sure Jen appreciates that. And, but yeah, there's something about like knowing that like, oh wow, this is not really lingering at all. And you still get like the full effect of like having a good smoke, which is very, very important.
Yeah, you don't smell like the quintessential guy who chain smokes.
Yeah.
The guy you run into at like a convenience store that just reeks.
The guy who's just hiding from his wife.
the dad that went out for a pack of smokes or 2 or 3
or 10
and never came back.
Now you used to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah. Now that I've taken up pipes, I haven't really been smoking cigarettes. But before I was smoking cigarettes, I would smoke a brand called Nat Sherman's. It was natural tobacco. See, I've always been sort of a purist.
That's good.
Since I started off with cigars when I was younger, when I was 18, I always appreciated the taste of the tobacco. And just like coffee, tobacco from different regions of the world have different tastes.
Oh, yeah.
And I became a really big fan of Dominican tobacco. There's other regions like Nicaragua. For me, the palate was more of an earthy type of blend. So if I was to compare a Nicaraguan tobacco to a coffee, I would say that it was more Ethiopian.
Curious.
I don't know if you know about coffee, but Ethiopian coffee has like an earthy type of undertone. But yeah, I was smoking cigarettes, and I just really appreciated the natural approach that this company took towards their tobacco. They have a line of cigars as well, and actually one of my pipes is made by this company, Nat Sherman.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was doing that. But it's just not the same. It's not the same anymore.
I mean, it's a completely different ritual.
It's a different ritual because when I was smoking cigarettes, it was different. I would smoke just to, whenever I had 20 minutes, go out and
have a cigarette smoke.
Like every day I would have I would be like Pope Pius the 10th.
Hey.
St. Pope Pius the 10th. I would go out and have my one cigarette a day.
Mm-hmm.
but it was always a stressful thing. It was never anything kind of like relaxing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's different with the pipe now.
Yeah, and I hear about that because I think that there's a lot of people who, if they do cigarettes now, they roll them and pack them themselves.
Yeah,
they're really expensive in this town now.
Yeah,
I told
the taxes here for tobacco are really high.
Yeah, although I'll tell you, all the more reason to be a pipe smoker though, because you get way more bang for your buck.
That's true.
Way more.
Yeah, I'm still working on my tins,
dude. I still have tins, and I got so many cigars. So many. Just like half, like quarter smoked. It's a really exciting thing, and so I think that for any guy listening, I think a really just important thing to say, of course, is that don't feel like you are lacking in your authentic masculine image if pipe smoking isn't for you.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the fun, it's like you get to look like Chesterton, you get to look like Tolkien, you get to look like a Civil War guy, but don't think like, well, if you're a little more health conscious, or if you're just like, it's not really like my kind of thing, that's totally fine. There's nothing, it's not sinful to smoke it in moderation, and it's not sinful to abstain, of course. But I think the point that we're just trying to make is that there's been so many backwards thinking in our culture in terms of what's supposed to be the things that we gravitate towards at the end of the day. The stressors that really are just compiled on more stressors, that sort of thing. Our society, our way of life, and ourselves really don't slow down a lot. I think this is really important. I think what's really funny is now the Exodus, I'll tie this back in, but now the Exodus has picked up actually. There's actually been a lot more pipe smoking between the two of us, just like ritually together.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons is because a lot of those other facets of life we would just use, television, video games, browsing Reddit for hours.
Just endless scrolling.
But it's not happening anymore. So I think that's been nice because I think that we've had a lot of really good time together, just like two bros, just
I think that's the biggest takeaway is if you're listening. And even if I mean this episode just by nature is more geared towards men, but even women who might be listening, the big takeaway is to take some time to form community.
Yeah.
Take some time to get to know your friends a little bit more and spend time with them and have quality conversations, quality experiences where you're just relaxing, and even in that space where you're not praying per se, but you're still experiencing God in that leisure, and we need that. We need to take that back a little bit. We need some time to just relax.
Saint Jose Maria Escriba and kind of the entire philosophy of Opus Dei is to make your life a prayer.
Yeah.
And that includes your work, and that includes your leisure and everything. So, it might sound a little funny, like, how can just like smoking like a pipe, like surely that's for yourself, not really for God. Like, how can you turn that into it? But as we talked about with the invocation of incense, how I really do think that there's something in my brain. I know that when I smoke, we get very theological. How we talk, what we talk about, it's very interesting.
Your quote unquote reptilian brain.
In my caveman Paleolithic, I'm reading Chesterton's The Everlasting Man, and one thing he is so good about this because everyone talks about like the caveman brain, right? But here's the funny thing. It's like, even by science, like our brains would not have like would have been the same size, guys. Like we would have the same triggers. The caveman is still a Homo sapien. He's still a man, guys. There's this like, we don't evolve like that, guys. So he's like they're like, they pick up like a stick and they're like, this is what he must have used to bash women over the head and take them back to his cave. And it's like, when has romance ever been bashing women over the head? And at what point would man have just been like, oh, I'm sorry, honey, I didn't mean to club you over the head, like there's in one of his not to go back, I always go back to Chesterton, I'm not apologetic, but one of his essays, he talks about the don'ts of the world, like don't ever say, and one of them is he talks about that, don't ever say that the prehistoric man clubbed prehistoric women in order to make her a wife. And he's like, does the male sparrow club the female sparrow in order that they two build a nest together? Like, this has probably been just like going on, kids.
Also, don't take your women to a club.
Oh, don't.
Or meet them there.
Or these are true. We should be smoking now. We can't, because this is my house. But you will notice that there are no fire.
Much to
Much to our buddies' chagrin. Why can't we smoke in here?
Yeah, he thought we were going to smoke inside.
That was the
so
funniest
cold.
pause. I don't have smoke detectors though.
Oh, okay.
But that's because if I ever burn a pancake, you know. Rudy, I'm going to need a smoke.
Well, Jordan's having a meltdown.
Okay, I am. I'm having more of a meltdown than Nancy Pelosi on State of the Union night. Thanks to the estimable Charles Coulombe, who is one of my...
Basically is Chesterton.
Who is basically Chesterton, yeah. Charles Coulombe, who we'd love to have on the show someday, is a really good Catholic writer, blogger, and author, and he is also a monarchist. So he has written books like Puritan's Empire, Star Spangled Crown. He's on with the Tumblr House has which is a publishing company, has a podcast that I'm very fond of called Off the Menu with Charles Coulombe and Tumblr House's president Victor Franchini. And they just talk about a myriad of topics. And I saw him at Theology on Tap in Pasadena, and I've stayed in contact with him because I very much like his thoughts. And he's also a native Californian, or at least he's grew up here. And what's really funny about that is California, as we've talked about in previous episodes, has a history of Catholicism all of its own, for good, better, for worse. So
mostly for worse.
Once upon a time, boys and girls, back in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a newspaper called the Roman Catholic or the Los Angeles Lay Mission. And it was a bunch of lay people writing about essentially the dumpster fire that was Los Angeles under Cardinal Roger Mahony. I also found a subsidiary. There's a San Diego wing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So look, what I've said to Rudy and I have come to the conclusion of is that we're really spoiled because we have a Latin Mass fraternity church. And this year alone, I've been to Latin Mass at 5 different places all over California. And what we hope is that for our children, it won't be a big deal. For our grandchildren, it just won't be a big deal. For us, it's a big deal, but we just haven't had the fight that a lot of these guys had. So imagine,
yeah, we're coming into it so late. I mean, we had a person the other day stop us after Mass and tell us that, you know, she was really excited for us to be really gung ho about tradition because she had been through the liturgical changes right after the council, and she like maintained everything that she could. So yeah, we're coming into it late.
Yeah. And it's funny because here in California and in Los Angeles, there are still some very pretty churches. And what's funny is even before I knew that this was the case, I was like, these churches had to fight hard to keep their architecture. You could tell. And that turned out to be validated. Okay, so Charles Coulombe has a column in the Los Angeles Lay Mission called the Roman Catholic.
Roman as in like
I'm roaming around. And all he would do is he would go to the different churches here in the diocese and give what I would say is an objective review of the Mass.
These articles are gold, people.
They are gold.
It's a gold mine.
I'm going to read a little excerpt. Let me get my phone real quick. So imagine that you are a traditional Catholic trying to survive in this time. So let's say it's like 2002 or something. I'm going to put you at St. Charles Borromeo Church, which is one of the prettiest churches in Los Angeles based in North Hollywood. Anyone that goes in it now will be like, wow, this is just fantastic architecture. It was almost ruined. So one of the major American reprovators was a guy named Father Vasco. I can't remember his first name, but the point being is that this guy would go to churches in the East, churches in the West, and by reprobate, I mean he'd be the one who would talk about taking out the baptismal font, the altar rails, taking out, gosh, okay, turning the church into a freaking spaceship. You know, when you go into a church and the altar is in the center.
Like a certain church in Sierra Madre that looks like literally an airplane.
Oh,
with
gosh.
the resurrectifix.
Oh, don't kill me now.
At least the tabernacle's in the center at that point.
Thank God. This is, okay, here's a funny thing. He was advocating that it wasn't, and this is why. Remember that story I told about my dad and that woman who said that it was too distracting in the center?
Yeah.
That wasn't just an isolated incident. I just found out that was a widespread philosophy.
Oh, boy.
So Father Vasco invites all these parishioners to St. Charles Borromeo for the renovation building fund renovation project, right? He's a very famous designer. In fact, Father Vasco is responsible for the interior of the cathedral of the angels.
Hey, thanks, bud.
Thanks, buddy. So let me read you some excerpts. So he's sitting down these people at St. Charles Borromeo, and it says this: Father Vasco also projected images of his reconciliation chapel, small carpeted rooms in place of confessionals, and Eucharistic chapels. The church teaches, says Father Vasco, that the tabernacle is ideally in a side chapel, distinct from the main body of the church. Noticing the unconcealed discomfort in the audience, he said, "If you don't believe what I'm saying and you think I'm heretical, go look it up for yourself. You are adults and I want to treat you like adults."
Yeah, where though? What's your source, Father?
What's your authority, Padre? People were like, and so he's showing like slides, of course, of like what St. Charles Borromeo is gonna look like, and people were like, it's gonna look like a gym. And he was like, no, it's not, my friends.
My friends.
He says, Rose says that Vasco discourages the use of images of the saints and our Lord and Our Lady because, quote unquote, he's opposed to anything that comes off as strictly religious in nature. One of the things he's doing in Milwaukee is getting rid of all the shrines and putting multicultural pieces of art in their place, such as hanging tapestries to celebrate the different cultures that make up diverse Milwaukee, which isn't all that diverse, mostly Germans and Poles. Yet there is not going to be any German artwork or Polish artwork. There will be Buddhist and Native American artwork, that sort of thing. It'll be consistent with his other work. Oof. Yeah, it is. So it's just like reading through all these articles, what you discover is, so Charles Coulombe, so there'd be like hard, regular articles like that, which would just be expressing what would go on in Los Angeles. Then you get to these Roman Catholic articles, and what it would be like is he would talk about the architecture of the church, maybe a little bit about its history. This church was like, it's a nice kind of like Blessed Sacrament, you know, that like kind of like a nice Gothic or Baroque architecture built. He attended there as a youth. He was a Boy Scout there, and then he'll sit down for Mass and he'll talk about a couple of things: the genders of the altar servers, what the music sounds like, the priest. He talks a little bit about the history of the priest, you know, or the Monsignor or whoever it's doing it. And then he'll talk about just how the Mass progresses. This is what Eucharistic prayer they used in here. Okay, so here in the Diocese of Los Angeles, there used to be glassware. Stemware was used for the
sacred vessel.
The sacred vessel. So essentially, you would get the wine in an ice pitcher, for heaven's sake, and you would get like little like of those like glass looking goblet things for the precious blood. And I don't even know about the precious body. I can't even. I am shooketh. And so the Vatican, Rome itself said, listen, you cannot have these as the sacred vessels. Was a decree for the entirety of the church. Cardinal Mahony ignored that decree and continued that practice of using stemware in his churches. I gotta tell, okay, for those who don't know, Cardinal Roger Mahony was Archbishop of the Diocese of Los Angeles prior to Archbishop Gomez. He is a disgraced cardinal because he covered up a lot of sex abuse in this diocese. Millions of dollars. We are the largest diocese in the United States. I think we've had the largest payout. Millions of dollars shuffled around priests, the utter destruction of tradition. A man who closed down a lot of schools, almost closed down St. John's Seminary, all these places, spent $200 million on the current cathedral because St. Vibiana's, after the 95 earthquake, just wasn't big enough. And when you read these documents that he put out, Gather Us Together, and all these liturgical documents that he had, what I'm going to do, audience, is I'm going to link the archives of these articles on our YouTube. And so you can come take a look, and I'll link them also when we post them, so you can see them for yourself. Really wonderful articles that these brave people really put on. A lot of Catholics that are still in the fight now, which is really kind of cool to see, where they all were a decade, 2 decades ago. Anyway, what he would do is he would talk about this. So Cardinal Mahony, by his own writings, seems to imply that you hear these dumb buzzwords. We are church. And when they talk about Eucharist, they don't mean the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, which transubstantiates itself on the altar under the forms of bread and wine. You, Rudy, you are Eucharist.
I am Eucharist.
Yeah. I mean, what a disgusting thing to think. He brought the advent of liturgical dancers, really in charge of wrecking a lot of the beautiful churches here in Los Angeles. Just absolutely horrible. Shuffled around priests, of course, never mind the sex abuse crises, millions of dollars paid out. And what you get a sense of when you read these articles is it's kind of hopeless. Like, I don't want to be like that pessimistic, but the fraternity's not here. So you could go society, of course, but you know, a lot of these guys really just wanted to stay like completely consistent with everything. This is for these articles, it's late John Paul II and early Benedict XVI, because the articles kind of stop after 2006, at least in this archive that I have. And you can tell that some of the reform ideas are on, but it's not going to happen in Los Angeles. Oh, the big fight. Last little point. The big fight is, we still see it. After the Agnus Dei, do you stand or do you kneel?
Boy, your knees better be on the ground.
Wouldn't that be nice? What if I told you that there were priests in these dioceses which would tell the faithful that if you kneel, it's a mortal sin?
Yeah, I mean, the fight's not over. You know, that was what, up until early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know? Now we're in 2020 now. And the fight isn't over. It's taken different forms now, and people are more aware of that now. For example, we still have the LA Religious Education Congress.
Oh, can we just a moment of silence, please? Can we get some F's in the chat, please?
I mean, it's just one of the most ridiculous things that we have still. And just go on YouTube, do yourself a favor if you want to have a laugh and also be angry. just type in LA Rec opening liturgy. Whatever. Any year. Pick any year. 2012
was funny. 2016, 2018.
They're all horrible.
Horrible. It's not even Protestant, because Protestants have more dignity than that. It is actual, like, it's
a destruction of the liturgy. It's a destruction of our Catholicity.
Every little aspect of it. And it's very funny because here's the funny thing. That kind of stuff Mahoney adored. That's one of his remnants. And by the way, Mahoney's still doing stuff in this diocese.
He lives in St. Charles, Barron.
He spoke at the LA Rec last year.
Yeah.
Apparently on like migrant rights or something.
Last year, he confirmed a bunch of kids.
Yeah. At the church right down the road from me.
So he's still doing things.
So I think that the takeaway is this. So the nice thing is that there is, I'm reminded from what you just said, the war's just begun. You know, it's like the battle for Helm's Deep is over. The battle for Middle Earth is about to begin. It's true. Yeah. There are a ton of, I mean, look, again, we are really spoiled. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Guys like Charles Coulombe and the men and women who wrote that newspaper, and by the way, they got a lot of flack for it. Oh, it's really funny hearing how much feathers were ruffled. But it's very hard, because what it reminds people is that the Catholic Church is eternal, and our Catholicity cannot be buried.
Yeah, we're gonna beat these bastards back. We've already won the battle. We have God on our side.
Yeah, I was gonna say Christ is king, and all we're doing is enthroning him. Yeah. And so look what's happening. It's like there are more tabernacles, not less tabernacles, that are going back into the center.
Yeah.
There's more perpetual adoration going on. There is a new generation of priests and a new generation of laity and a new generation of everything coming up, and there's a lot more. It's really funny reading articles in places like National Catholic Reporter and all these other places. Yeah, I know, right? And they're like, you got to watch out for these ultra conservative priests who just want to wear their cassocks all the time. And they're like, Novus Ordo diocesan priests, just regular guys who love the Lord, are just like, I kind of want to wear my cassock all the time. Like a long cassock, that's awesome. Because again, image is everything, and that's important. But also, it's dope. The fact that so many priests and bishops think that, I'm just gonna go around and lay clothes, and like I was Father Jim on Sunday, but I'm just Jimmy today, Jimmy Martin today.
Please call me Jim.
My friends. So look, so again, like it's you.
Sorry, that's an inside joke. There was a Jesuit that we met. And he would open up the masses like that. He would be really loud and open his arms and say, "My friends." So anyway, the inside joke. Now you're in it.
Hey, so now you're part of us. Well, part of the ship, part of the crew. So yeah, so listen, just continue to remember that the fight is still on, and we cannot be asleep. We cannot start slacking because of all these good things that are happening. If your church, if your priest, if your bishop is doing really good things, you need to start supporting. You need to find a way. It doesn't always mean financial, but there's
Write
time.
them a letter. Do something.
If you have children and they go to the LA Rec every single year, you need to be like, this isn't no. Like, no, right? Write a letter. I mean, honestly, write a letter. Or better yet, vote with your wallet and vote with your feet. If your priest is doing something awesome, or if you think your priest would be on board with doing something more traditional at the church, I like the line in scripture, gird up your loins and fight like a man. That's what God says to Job when he scoops Job up, actually sets him straight. I've always thought that was the most powerful thing. Gird up your loins and fight like a man. It's time to do that. There's a time to sit down, relax, and smoke a pipe. And there's a time to put your embers down and get to work.
Get some signatures, get a traditional Latin mass in there.
Yeah.
Ask for more reverence. There's so many things that we can do to reclaim the Roman rite.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we have to do is to have a little bit of time for discernment. So maybe take up a pipe and sit there and discern how you can bring some of these traditions back into your parish, because how we pray is going to dictate how we believe.
Lex orandi, lex credendi.
Another excellent episode. Thank you guys for tuning in and supporting us and keeping with us. As usual, share this with your friends. Share it on Facebook, on Twitter. Text it to your buddies.
Share it with your bishop.
Don't.
Make sure.
Think about that one.
Ooh, easy there, right? Thank you guys so much, and please continue to pray for us as we pray for you. All right. God bless you. May I keep you. Adios.